Okay, so let's just talk and we'll get into it. And as I mentioned before, I did see the before and after photo, and you look fantastic now. And congratulations on the success and helping so many people. And I see that you've trained a lot of people. There's a lot of practitioners available that do some work on your site, and you have an online quiz. So let's go to the beginning and let's talk about being out of control. So what was it like for you in being out of control, and what are some of the things that you tried that didn't work so well for you?
Oh my gosh, it's been so long, but it's literally it's a living nightmare. Waking up and doing nothing but obsessing about your body and about food, and only thinking about what you can't eat or what you shouldn't eat or what you can eat, and how am I going to exercise to burn this off? And I mean, it's absolutely torture. It's like I was literally torturing myself. And I know people who struggle with food addiction. That's their nightmare. They live every single day. So for me, I would wake up and I would feel like, okay, today I'm going to start my diet and I'm going to be perfect today. And I would eat all the things that I was supposed to eat. But then by the evening time, I was just so ravenous, and I had deprived myself of all the things that I really loved all day. So I was so ravenous at night, and I was so sick of being controlled that I just, I would go crazy. And then, of course, you feel guilty and you feel ashamed of yourself. And, for me, I would eat until I was so sick that I couldn't, eat anymore. And then you pass out in a food coma. And then the next morning you wake up and you're like, okay, I'm going to be good today. And, you still feel terrible from the night before. So, I mean, it's just this roller coaster cycle that went on for me for years and years. And I think the natural thing is to try all of the normal diet stuff, right? So you try whatever popular diet is out. You try, I remember I got hooked on diet pills for a while and had this like total mental breakdown about how dirty my house was one day when it wasn't even dirty, and like, I just drove myself crazy with all the different things that I tried. Um, so yeah, so that was kind of my living nightmare, and I know most people who struggle with food, they're still in it. They're still living it.
Yeah, I can relate to that because I had it for 5 years. I had bulimia and anorexia, and I understand exactly what you're saying. And every day I would write a list of how I was going to be perfect and all my times that I was going to eat the perfect meals. And I might get a day or two into it, and then willpower would give out, and then it would be an all-out binge, and then a purge, and then a starvation. I'd have to exercise for hours and hours and hours, take diet pills, laxatives, all these things. And I understand that getting trapped in that obsessed state of being is it's so unfortunate because it seems like there's no way out. So what is the way out, Brittany? How did you start to get control, and how did you start to get progress?
That is such a good question, and I literally searched for this answer for like 15 years, and I really feel like I developed a cure for this problem. It's one of the things that I work with clients on now, but like I said, I mean, I tried everything, and nothing really changed for me. Everybody gives mindset techniques. Okay, you can look at it in a different way, and I mean, there's a lot of addiction recovery. Like there's the Overeaters Anonymous and stuff, but all of those things, they just put pressure on you to like follow their method. It's just another method you have to follow, right? Rather than getting to the core problem. So what I discovered was at the core of this issue is I call them echoes, and it's another way. You've heard people that struggle with like alcohol addiction say, "My demons got the best of me." So it's kind of like demons, but I just don't like that word. So what I discovered is that the reason that people have compulsive eating, or really any addiction for that matter, is because of past negative experiences. And so if you have emotional eating or compulsive eating, it's very likely that some bad things have happened to you in your life. So, it can be anything from, a bad breakup to a really abusive parent, or something someone said to you, or, just something that really, really affected you in a major way. And what I discovered was that, the way to get to the core of those issues is by using a technique that I use called emotional freedom techniques, or tapping. That's the kind of nickname for it. There's been a book on the best-selling New York Times bestsellers list last year about it, so I think more people are starting to learn about it. But it looks totally crazy, and you just you focus on your problems and you tap on these acupressure points. And of course, you think how could that ever do anything? But actually, what happens when you do that is it actually shifts the brain chemistry around the problem. So you have to know the system, and you have to know actually how to apply it. And I actually apply it a bit different than most of the people that teach this technique, because what I found is the traditional method didn't really work for this problem. So my healing and my transformation kind of came in a couple of different steps. So first I learned this technique, and I mean, oh my gosh, what a difference it made. Of course, the first time you feel really stupid doing it, because you're tapping, and you're how the hell is this going to work? But when you start to notice the changes, and you see, oh my gosh, I have had chocolate in my cupboard, and I haven't even thought about it once today. You start to believe, and you start to go, oh, okay, there's something here. So anyway, I just became a master at using that technique. I just decided, okay, this is the one thing that works. So I tried everything. I tried hypnosis. I tried all the alternative things that are out there. So many things, rapid eye, all those things. Never worked for me, but this did, and it showed me proof. So I just realized, okay, I just have to really become an expert working with this technique. And so I was able to, over the course of a few years working with other people, I was able to kind of experiment with different ways to use it. And so that's the baseline technique that I use in my programs and to do all the healing. But I've added additional components into it, specifically for emotional eating and binge eating. So that's really the way that you can heal, is by using these techniques to shift your brain chemistry. So one of the things that happens that most people don't know is that when you struggle with food cravings, when you struggle with addictive food cravings, those food cravings actually come from positive memories from your past. So everything positive and negative affects you, right? You create your reality, you create your life around your past experiences, you develop belief systems, right? So one of the things that I started noticing with myself and with my clients was that people who suffered with specific food cravings, so for instance, chocolate chip cookies or ice cream, if I asked them what their first experiences of eating those foods with, they would immediately be transported back in time and say, oh, my mom and I used to have a ritual where we would eat that every time when I would come home from school, or grandma used to bake cookies with me every Sunday, or things like that, right? And so what happens is that the brain hardwires feelings of love and comfort and relaxation when you eat those foods. So when you eat those foods, when you eat a cookie, it's not just the cookie that makes you feel so good. It's because you remember, you immediately get transported back in time subconsciously, and you remember what it was like to be there with grandma cooking those cookies and feeling her love and feeling how comforted you felt. And, who could get enough of grandma's love and comfort, right? So that's why when you have these addictions, these food addictions, these chemical associations in your brain, that's why when you go on a diet and you take those foods away, you end up feeling so deprived and so angry, because someone just took your love and comfort away, right? Yep. So it makes sense that, you could only go for maybe a couple of hours or maybe even a couple of days if you're really good like you've got really strong willpower, before you just, you have a meltdown and you have a whole box on, right?
Yeah.
So it's things like that we discover that, literally it's one technique. It takes me maybe 30 minutes to teach it, and then you can apply it to all the different foods that you crave, and the problem never comes back. So you'll never have the same relationship with cookies. You'll still be able to enjoy cookies, but cookies won't be grandma's love anymore. We give the feelings back to the person they came from, so that when you eat cookies, you're not also feeling grandma's love, you're feeling grandma's love already. Does that make sense?
It absolutely does. What's brilliant is that you have apparently discovered how to use the right sequencing and the right setup and the right statements to get to the problem. Like you just said, you found that these cellular memories, they get into the DNA. It's something we remember. and that's the comfort, and we're looking for that comfort because we have a trauma or a shock or something that throws us off. Our harmony's lost, and we're looking for that. I used to actually, but Dr. Roger Callahan used to be my tapping coach, and he created thought field therapy, which is cool because now you don't actually need to use the thought field because EFT came out after that. So anybody should check that out. If you listen to Brittany just now talk about it, you should learn it because it's really powerful, and it can do in minutes sometimes what you can't do in hours or weeks. But the cool thing I noticed listening to you speak is you have to know the right things to look for and the right things to say and focus on, because you're going to collapse the trigger, essentially. Is that what you found? Is that you kind of get these triggers, and then you have to know where to look, and then you can kind of break those triggers?
Exactly. That's exactly. I'm so glad that you noticed that, because I usually save that kind of material for people that already know about EFT, because it can get kind of confusing. But you're right.
Yeah.
If you just know the regular EFT processing can be, actually, that was one of my biggest problems, is that I knew about EFT for about 7 or even 10 years, but I couldn't resolve my emotional eating with it because the traditional way of tapping doesn't work for emotional eating. So that's why I developed the Watkins method, which is literally a different way of applying EFT specifically for food addiction. So what I did, what I found was that I developed 3 main techniques, and actually with all of these techniques, we barely use words. Because what I found is that emotional eaters and people that are addicts are usually more driven by emotion than logic, and that's not a bad thing. That's how I'm driven. That's it's a great thing. But unless you, what I found was that when they had to say certain things, they would get caught up in I don't know what to say and I don't know how to apply it. So there's basically 3 main techniques that I teach, and what you do is you find for different situations you have different techniques. So for instance, if you have a food craving, there's a food craving technique. If you have emotional eating, there's an emotional eating technique. If you're sabotaging yourself, there's a self-sabotage technique. And between those 3 techniques, when you learn to apply them through the training system and things, there's not one problem that you can't solve yourself. And so I think you're right. That's what has made this so cool, is that I took EFT, which is an amazing tool, and I made it specifically for weight issues and took out the need of words. So we use a lot of visualizations, or I just have them feel their feelings, because emotional eaters are really good at feeling their feelings. They know that they feel bad. They can usually pinpoint and say, okay, this is what I'm feeling.
Yeah. So essentially, you're looking behind the problem that, it appears to all surface appearances that somebody with a food addiction is having a problem with food, and a lot of people, their family, friends, associates, etc., they might look at them and say, what the heck is wrong with this person? Like they can't eat, they're scared to eat, they don't understand, but you're going beneath the surface to the actual underlying factors. Now, does that work with somebody who's, I had a friend, and she had anorexia really bad, and she got to the point where she was so skinny that it was absolute scary to look at her. I mean, she was really, really far gone. Does it even work for people that are that tied into the problem?
There's always, so in my work, in all the years that I was working with people, I discovered that there's 7 psychological weight loss blockers. So, even with anorexia, you could say the same thing. There's blockers. There's certain things that happen to somebody in their life that causes these mental blocks in their mind, which explains why some people have this problem and other people don't. And so, in my work, I've been able to figure out the right series of questions to ask somebody, and it's always going to lead back to something that happened to them that's traumatic in the past. So, somebody who has bulimia or anorexia, there has probably been something where they felt really unsafe in their body. One of the things that I talk about that's very different to what most people talk about is how common it is to have sexual abuse with people who struggle with their weight. Either you put on a bunch of extra weight so that you can protect, as women, this is one of the strategies that women have, put on a bunch of extra weight so that you can protect yourself against unwanted attention, or you completely shrink down until you're invisible. So, usually one of those two things is kind of at play when somebody has weight issues. It's not all the time, but about 80% of the time, somebody has some form of sexual abuse that they've suppressed, or a lot of women do this, like, oh, well, this thing happened to me, but it's not really that big of a deal. It's probably my fault anyway. It's like, their body just doesn't feel safe around attention from men. So, even if they put themselves in a compromising situation, it's not that it was the guy's fault and she has to blame him. It's just that she needs to use these techniques to release the trauma and release the fear, because there's some part of her that doesn't ever want to have that same attention again. So she believes if she looks good the way that, is attractive to men or other people, then she'll get more attention. So absolutely, I mean, it would be something like that, or some big traumatic thing that happened in her life that, just flicked a switch, and that's the way she dealt with it. She deals with it.
That makes sense to me. You talk about the, like putting on the armor, and then also becoming invisible, like I don't want anybody to see me, or etc. And as a man, I know it says on your website you have worked with some male clients, and back when I had my eating disorders, I felt really, really awkward because I was a man, and I didn't know how to talk to anybody about it. And now that you mention it, there was the sexual trauma, and it kind of just came to the surface of my mind that when you were talking. And so that was a really good insight, because I didn't even look there. So is that true for men and women, do you think?
Absolutely. I have the few male clients that I have worked with, I would say, it's on the lower end with them, but maybe 60% of them have had some form of negative sexual trauma that was causing it. It's actually the strongest weight loss blocker. So there's 7 psychological weight loss blockers. And by the way, if your viewers want to figure out which weight loss blocker they have, they can go to BrittanyWatkins.com/quiz/Matthew, and they can take a quiz. And what's super cool is, by the way that they answer the questions, we'll tell them which weight loss blocker is their number one. So I'm just going to give everybody a sneak peek. So if you have sexual trauma, we call it the I'm Too Sexy weight loss blocker. If you have any kind of negative sexual trauma, that's actually going to affect you the most. So even if we got rid of, say you had all 7 weight loss blockers, even if we got rid of the other 6, but you still have that last one, you would continue to have your weight problem. However, if we reversed it and we just got rid of that weight loss blocker, sometimes the rest of these just go away on their own. So it's the one that affects you the most. Absolutely. And if you think about it, what better way to control your body than to either add more weight or lose weight, or what better way to feel in control of your body, right?
Yeah.
So for women that have been sexually abused, to ward off the predator and to put weight on is like a way of them taking control. And to be bulimic, it's like, okay, well, I didn't have control of my body, and now I do have control of my body, right? So it's just your subconscious way of getting control of the situation.
What's really obvious to me listening to you is that you really, really understand what you're talking about. Because I've been free for over a decade from my eating disorders, and I've also been on the lookout for a lot of information, and everything you're saying is just spot on. You really understand these issues. And tell me real quick, one of the hardest ones that I had to overcome that took quite a bit longer actually than anorexia and the bulimia was the night eating desire to just have to wake up in the night just to get through the night and sleep. Is that similar? Is that all tied together with the same emotional issues underlying?
Yeah, so in that situation, what I would do is I would have you use the push the move technique. And what you do is you literally you push. So when you're in that state and you understand this, since you have this problem, and you want to eat food, it's almost like this animalistic reaction, like put that food in my mouth now. I cannot relax unless I have food. Well, one of the hardest things to do is actually push the food away. But if you push the food away and you ask yourself a series of questions, you can actually figure out the exact thing that happened to you in the past that's causing your reaction. So I'll just kind of give you an example, and maybe your viewers, if they can download, and it'll give you a whole quick start guide on how to do this technique. So if you want to practice this and try it on your own, you can do that. So what you do is, in that moment, you push the food away, arm's length distance, out from in front of you, out from your body. You sit back and you start tapping on the karate chop point. And then I have this guided audio where I walk people through this. So what I say is, okay, push the food out, arm's length distance in front of you, sit back, feel that bad feeling. I'm going to ask you a question, and I want you to tell me the first thing that comes to your mind. How old are you right now? And the person will just say 5, 8. Okay, so then I say, okay, take a few steps closer to her. See yourself as that at that age. Take a few steps closer, get closer and closer until you can step inside her body, open your eyes, take a look around, and tell me what's going on, even if you think you're making it up. So as they tap through the points, they're releasing the anxiety and the trauma of whatever happened in that moment. See, what happened is at different parts of our lives, we have things that happen to us that we can't process correctly. So we actually get frozen or traumatized. That person at that point in our lives gets a little bit frozen and traumatized, and it's living in the background of our psyche, warning us about a similar situation that can happen. So most of the time, the things that you regress back to kind of don't even really make a whole lot of sense. Like, oh, my mom was yelling at me, or there was a glass that dropped, or, there's somebody outside my door. Sometimes it's related, and sometimes it's just, you can't even understand why it's related. But then as you tap through the points and you remember the situation, what we do is we actually heal that little person. We heal that part of you that didn't understand what happened in that scenario. So there's this really cool part at the end where we have you, as the adult that you are today, step inside this picture and tell the little you what happened and make sense of it for them, right? So you have this complete, amazing healing transformation where now the little you doesn't need to be scared anymore. And so, we go through a process of integrating. The whole thing takes about 15 minutes, and you will literally look at the food in front of you and not want to touch it. So I don't know about you, but I tried about a million different things for emotional eating, especially in that moment, because for me, willpower was the hardest thing. I did not have the willpower to tell myself, no, I'm not going to eat that. It would just last for maybe 2 hours. And so this way, with this technique, it literally takes away the need for willpower, other than the initial part of using the actual technique and pushing the food away. So I absolutely love it. It's an amazing technique. And so to answer your question, full circle, what we would do in that moment is just walk you through a visualization where you push it away, and you would know, you would be able to realize what was happening, what's causing you, or what's happened in your past that's causing your emotional night eating. And you probably need to do it maybe, 5, 6, maybe 10 times, and it would go away.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
I like that you said that, because a lot of times, I used to work with Roger Callahan, and we'd go through an algorithm that he would make up. And you're right. It's the first time it might work, and it might work the second time. But I did notice that it will work. You just have to get to the right. There's something there. Maybe it's a thought or something you said yourself or something, and it will just go away. And that was profound for me.
That's the thing, is that most people, with the way that Roger and, with EFT is taught, is that you have to identify the problem. And that's really hard for somebody, like you're saying, I'm getting up and eating in the night. And, he was probably asking, what's your emotion? What are you feeling right now? Most people don't know what's bugging them. They just know they need to eat, right? So this takes away that guesswork. You don't have to know what's wrong with you. You don't even have to know how you feel. All you have to do is push the food away. You're going to feel like crap, but you're going to feel something. And that's the thing. So, this was so cool. I actually discovered this right before I was about to teach a class on emotional. I was teaching a class on sexual abuse or something, and obviously I was triggered. And I was eating a chocolate bar, and I was like, God, this is so bad. I'm teaching about this, and I'm still eating emotionally. I was so frustrated with myself. And I just decided that I was going to try this new technique. I was like, all right, I'm not gonna want to know what's behind something, stop the behavior and notice what comes up. So I just said, okay, I'm going to do what he said. And I pushed it away and I started tapping and I said, okay, how old am I right now? And I asked myself a series of questions that I kind of told you. And I immediately went back in time and I did, this whole process that just came very intuitively at the time. And I looked back at the chocolate and I didn't want it. And that had never happened to me. I had been using tapping, the type that you're familiar with. I've been using tapping and I've never been able to have that experience. So that was when I knew I had something. And I started to practice with my clients. I was like, gosh, was it just me or would it actually work with other people? And every single person just got amazing results with it. So I of course, over the moon about it just because I feel like it's such a powerful technique, knowing, how badly people struggle with this. It's like, wow, I have the key to solve everything. So that's why I'm doing interviews like this so I can share it with more people because it's amazing.
No, it's fantastic, and I can see the real life application for broad spectrum. I always reframed it. And I said, most people have an eating disorder because they eat things that they don't want to eat, but they eat them because they're emotionally addicted or there's some reason why they're eating them. And then they beat themselves up because they ate it and they feel guilt and shame and all these other emotions. So you get a lot of people that probably don't have, anorexia or bulimia, just want to lose weight maybe, right?
Absolutely. So people come to me usually when they're in stage 2. So somebody comes to me and says, okay, I just want to lose weight. And I ask them, okay, well, do you eat when you're not really hungry? They go, no. I'll know that they're they still need to do a little bit of work before they're ready. Because if you don't even recognize when you're eating, then it's difficult to apply the technique. So this actually works really well for people who know that they eat when they're not really hungry. They know they have food cravings, or they know they have emotional eating and they can't stop. I call it unconsciously incompetent, where they are conscious of all the problems that they have, but they just don't know how to solve it. So anybody that's read the work of Janine Roth does a great job at telling you why you have a weight problem because when you're not really hungry. She just kind of leaves you off on the end of it where she starts to give you solutions that for me didn't work well enough. So mindfulness and meditation and things like that, just for me, I couldn't sit and meditate when I wanted to eat a chocolate chip cookie. I just couldn't do that. So it's helpful if they are at least a little bit aware.
Yeah.
They use food in a certain way.
Yeah, I thought the chocolate chip cookie was the meditation. I just would meditate too long with them. So, what about self-image? I know, let's say an anorexic might see themselves. It's almost like a psychosis where they see themselves as a fat person. How do you deal with that? Same way?
You would probably see the cool thing about this is that there's different ways to apply that method. So, I teach this in my coaching certification. Once you learn that you can push food away, you can actually push any negative behavior away too. So, you would focus in on what the problem is. So tune into the problem and, stop doing the problem. So, maybe, when you are looking at yourself in the mirror, that's kind of the problem for you. Push yourself away or see yourself as like a normal weight and notice what happens. So you can use it for all sorts of different scenarios to just tweak the application of it.
Okay. And in terms of your transformation, how long did it take you when you started to apply this and really get the hang of it to really get your life back on track again?
Well, for me, because I didn't have somebody giving me the system, I feel like I developed all the different tools over a series of a couple of years. So first I learned EFT. Then I learned how to apply EFT for food cravings. That really worked. But I still didn't have the emotional eating part. Then I figured out the emotional eating part, but there was still a self-sabotage piece. So once I figured out the self-sabotage piece, I had my 3 main techniques that were like, okay, now I'm completely in control. And actually, once I had all of that, it was about a month. And I actually forgot that I was even trying to lose weight. I was just using all of my techniques, and my boyfriend at the time was like, babe, you totally lost weight. I was like, wow. And I felt like I was eating more than normal. So what I love about this is that you don't have to use willpower to not eat certain foods. So I could never do that. I love food. I still love food. So for me, it had to feel like it wasn't hurtful. And that's what these techniques do, is because they shift your brain chemistry, you can be looking at a plate of cookies and they're not calling your name, and you're not having to tell yourself, don't eat the cookie. You're like, okay, I can have one, but then maybe you have two, and then you're like, oh, I'm feeling kind of sick, I don't want to. Or like, oh, it's not going to feel good if I eat another one. But that's not something I'm telling myself, it's just the way I'm wired now. So, it took me longer, but I would say the students, so I have a 6-month advanced program, and I can get my clients to completely heal their emotional eating in 6 months. The 6-week program works really well too. So I teach my main techniques in a 6-week program where I'm like, okay, this is my arsenal of tools. Take them and apply them. If they're people like you that have done a lot of personal development work, that really works well for them. And then we have a 6-month program that you have private coaching with either me or one of my private coaches, and we actually dive deeper in some of the big trauma stuff like sexual abuse and all the bad things that have happened. But people go through that and they really apply the techniques about 6 months. They start noticing changes in their eating from the first month.
Right. So that quiz would be a good place to start. Is that right?
Totally. Yeah, we really spent a lot of time figuring out the right questions to ask people, and it's very, very accurate. So yes, it's BrittanyWatkins.com/quiz/Matthew, because you heard about it here. And just what you'll do is you'll get a video that will tell you all about, or you'll get a video emailed to you, and it'll tell you all about, where the problem comes from, and it'll even tell you, I bet you act like this, and I bet you this when you're in this situation. So you'll really, really know that we do understand the problem. And then you can get started for free with the technique that we're talking about, by going to my website and downloading the Quick Start Guide. So it's right there, BrittanyWatkins.com. Just go to the homepage and you can download the guide, and it'll teach you how to do it. It'll be videos of me walking you through how to apply it, and get started right away.
That's fantastic. Do you want to share any stories at all of some success stories of people that came to you and they really made a great transformation? Any?
There's so many. Let me see, we're putting together our stories. There was a woman who had major sexual trauma. She had been struggling with her weight for, I think she was in her mid-50s. And she told me, Brittany, this is the last thing. I think she got a bonus or something, and it was her birthday, and she's like, this is what I'm buying for myself. She watched our testimonial video on Think and Thin, and we talk about, because we heal so many core issues, actually your whole life changes. So what happens when we heal negative sexual trauma, and what happens when we heal the relationship with your parents, and anything bad that's ever happened to you, you start seeing the world in a different way. And so people really talk about that's such an amazing benefit that comes from healing all these weight issues. So that was the thing. She said, I just want to feel better about myself. I don't really care if I lose the weight. And we worked with her for the whole 6 months, and she actually just called in. I think she's been out of the program for 2 months. She just called in and said she's lost 45 pounds. She went into a healthy diet or eating program, which is what a lot of people do. So they heal their emotional eating, and now all of a sudden they have the willpower and they can follow a healthy diet and eating and exercise plan. So she had been on some program that she had tried for years and years and years and always failed, and she had totally lost weight. She's like, I feel amazing. I'm not having any problems, no problems following the plan, nothing. So that was so cool to hear, just that transformation. And it was really just because of her sexual trauma. A lot of people, she'd been to therapists and she'd been to traditional psychologists about it, so she was really open to discussing it, but she hadn't healed at that core, deep brain chemistry level that we were able to, use with the methods that we have. So that's one. And actually, here's a really funny story. There's a woman, she didn't really have to lose much weight. She just had an eating problem that she wanted to stop. And she kept calling in, so we have these Q&As twice a month. She kept calling in and saying, how much she hated her job. She was posting in the Facebook group, I hate my job. I just don't know what to do. I hate living here. And, I just feel so bad all the time. And one of the things I said to her was, these things just have a way of working themselves out when you're in my program. And Just do the work, just do the tapping, clear out all the negative junk, and I bet this is just going to sort itself out. And sure enough, a couple months later, she got fired from her job. And about 2 weeks later, she got hired at a company and doing a job she absolutely loves. It made her required her to move to a different city, and she loves this new city. So she's so much happier in her life, and she stopped eating emotionally. So it was like, what we find is that a lot of times when people come to the program, they have other things in their life that need to be solved too. The tapping just kind of, takes care of all of those things. We also have a couple babies too, women who want to get pregnant who can't get pregnant. Because they start clearing out all the emotional stuff, their body relaxes and they're able to conceive. So I think we have like 3 babies so far. So that's a pretty cool thing too.
Yeah, a lot of those emotions are tied into many different areas in your life. Your finances, your romance, your career, all these things. If you have that, core pain, it's going to affect all these areas. So getting rid of that. That's what happened with me. I couldn't even hold a job when I had my eating disorders. I'd always quit because I felt I'd get my feelings hurt. I'd have a trigger, and then I'd walk out, and it was really a bad situation. And then when I finally walked away from all of it, I started to become successful because I could actually, like you said, I actually could use my willpower and focus and take my life back. So there was one thing I was going to mention in terms of application of time. If a person wants to work and do some of the work, each session requires about how long for each session? Is it 15 minutes? Is it an hour? Is it a half an hour?
Well, when they're working with a coach, we give them an hour session. So we might work on several different issues within that coaching session. But when they're applying it themselves, which I'm super into, self-empowerment. So I teach all the classes in the same way that I teach my coaching certification. So I train people on how to use these techniques so that anytime they have a food craving, anytime they feel like they're sabotaging, or anytime they want to eat food, they can apply it. So I would say when you do it to yourself, it might take like 15 minutes, maybe 20 minutes if something really big comes up. But it's not bad. I think the hardest part is just deciding that you're going to use the techniques. It's so much easier to eat the food, right? Obviously, the food is going to make you feel really good, and you don't want to have to stop and eat the food and actually use the technique. But man, the people that go through the program that are really good about applying the technique, even if they just apply it 50% of the time and they let themselves binge the other 50%, make major progress.
That's fantastic. So in terms of frequency, let's say if I wanted to come into your program today and I really want to get this thing taken care of, I want my life back, how often should I work on this, and what is the frequency for the 6-week program?
The 6-week program is there's one module a week.
Okay.
What the path of healing emotional eating usually is that a lot of stuff will come up in the beginning. So you're in the 6-month advanced program, you're working with a coach, you might have a lot of emotions that come up to the surface. Sometimes it's common that the problem will actually even get worse before it gets better. That's because your subconscious mind knows that there's a solution here, and it starts to give you all the stuff it wants to clear. So we can't clear things unless they're coming up. So it's actually a really good sign when a lot of stuff starts to come up when we start to work together. So definitely on a daily basis. I would say when you first start to work with it, and maybe after 3 or 4 months, it depends if you've been using it, every day, every time you have a problem. After maybe 3 or 4 months, you'll need it maybe once a week. Sometimes even less than that. I mean, everybody's different, just depending on how fully they're able to really commit to the transformation of this process. Some people aren't, completely ready to go there yet, and that's totally fine. It takes them a little bit longer. But I would say for people that are really completely committed, within about 3 months, their emotional eating is a quarter of what it used to be. Within just 4 sessions, their emotional eating can be cut in half. So, it happens very, very quickly, but, full transformation, I'm thinking I would give it about 3 months to really see a major shift in okay, I didn't even think about binging once this month.
Yeah. And I want to put that in perspective because I remember one time, I used to be a personal trainer for over a decade, and I would tell people, they'd say they don't have time to work out, and I would say, well, okay, let's say you worked out for an hour every day for 5 days a week, took 2 days off. I said, you're telling me that 5 hours total in your entire week is more than you can invest for the gains you're going to get on the other side. And if I put it in perspective like that, it actually made them realize, oh, it's only actually 5 hours of the whole week. But you're talking about like maybe an hour session. Even if you did that every day for 30 days, that's only 30 hours. You could potentially walk away from years of suffering within like 30 hours or 24 hours, you know?
Yeah, it's insane. I mean, literally, there's 12 private sessions in our 6 month course, and in just 12 of those private sessions, if they're doing 15 minutes here and there on their own, they're completely done. I mean, they've been suffering emotionally in their entire life, and in 3 to 6 months, it's completely gone, and you're completely in control again. Or after 12 sessions, 12 hours of working with somebody, as you put it, oh yeah, it's absolutely transformational. Yeah.
I love that. So with that said, I'm just going to remind everyone to go to BrittanyWatkins.com/quiz/Matthew and get started today. Take advantage of this. I know what she's doing is absolute spot on. I've done this work myself. Not as good as what Brittany puts out there, but I've done the EFT, I've done the TFT, I've worked on the emotional releasing, and I'm free today. And I want that for you, whether it's chocolate addiction, chocolate chip cookies, or you just feel like you have no self-esteem, anorexia, bulimia, whatever you want to call your problem. Definitely take advantage of it. And is there anything you want to add before we check out here, Brittany?
You know what? I think just the last thing that I'm thinking that I didn't share is if they want to see some stories, some interviews of people that have gone through this process, I think it's just really inspiring when you can hear about the transformation people have made. I have another website called thinkandthin.com, and they can go there and there's a couple, it's a really cool video, and there's a couple of interviews with people that have had this transformation. So if they want to check that out too, they can do that. But, I really encourage you to look into these techniques, whether it's with me or somebody else. Definitely there is a solution. I think for me, that was the thing that I felt so desperate to hear, is that I was looking for a solution and nothing worked. And so I think if I'm going to share anything today, it's like there is a solution. You absolutely can solve this. I have done it. 800 of my students have done it. It happens every single day. So if you just take that message and you do some more research, I've got lots of cool information on the blog, tons of videos on YouTube. So just do your research and figure out what your weight loss blocker is and go from there.
Awesome. And you have so many people that you've trained. How many people are on your website that have learned your technique that can facilitate this?
I think there's a little bit over 50 so far. So I've got about 10 that are graduating right now, so we'll maybe be close to 60. But yeah, I've trained 60 people on this method, and then we have people that have worked directly under me that work very closely with me, that work with us in our program. So yeah, there's tons of help out there. I mean, I always try to make this, I give free classes on this stuff too all the time, so I try to make it readily available to people. I give away these techniques for free. You don't have to buy my stuff in order to learn these methods too. So, we give the course and the training if you want to go deeper, but, at some point in the year, I teach all these methods completely for free. So if you get on my email list and you follow me, just make sure to come to the free step. And, if you can't, work with a program right now, or if that's just, not in your cards for you, you want to, get more exposure to these techniques, that's a great way to do it too. So.
Awesome. And I'm going to be devil's advocate before we check out. I'm all about the free stuff, and I love that as a lead-in. But I do know that coaching, mentorship, sponsorship, whatever you want to call it, is success without the weight in many cases. And investing in that has been transformational in my life. I've changed everything from my finances to my health, all that by investing in the right mentorship. And you are definitely a master of this because you know the sequences. You've taught 50 plus people how to do this. I've done EFT. I've gone to people that did not know the sequences, and it is possible to spend a lot of extra time if you don't know where to aim your target. So with that said, thank you so much, Brittany. I'm so glad you gave us this time and you gave out such incredible information, and I hope everybody enjoys it. I know they're gonna absolutely love it.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Matthew. I really appreciate being here.
All right. Have a good day.